Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and welcome to the August 9th governing body meeting. I call this meeting to order. If you will give your attention to Councilwoman Nager, who will provide the invocation this evening, stand as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to start this meeting, instead of with a prayer, with a meditation on the poet Amanda Gorman's poem, Closure. To begin again isn't to go backwards, but to decide to go. Our story is not a circle carved, but a spiral shed, shaped, spinning, shifting inward and outward ad infinitum, like a lung on the bank of speech. Breathe with us. We disembark both beside and beyond who we are and who we were. It is a return and a departure. We spiral on, pushing up and out like a growing thing, making its form out of earth. In a poem, there is no end, just a place where the page glows wide and waiting, like a lifted hand, poised and paused. Here is our bond, embroidered by bone. Perhaps love is how it feels to breathe the same air. All we have is time, is now. Time takes us on. How we are moved says everything about what we are to each other. And what are we to each other, if not everything?
Thank you, Councilwoman. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
Valdivia Acala. Ortiz.
Here.
Emerson.
Here.
Kale.
Turn it up if you want to hear it. Here.
There we go. Nager. Councilmember Nager.
Here.
Dobler.
I'm here on this side all by myself. Nobody wants to sit with me.
Duncan.
He was here. There we go.
He was here.
Yeah. And Lesser. All right. So we have 8 present. I didn't.
Hope I don't have to work with
9 present.
Thank you. Move on to agenda item number 2, presentations. City Manager.
At this time, I have, are you doing it?
Yes.
Yeah. Amanda Stan and the city attorney will be doing the presentation on the RHID.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. City Manager. So today, the city manager asked me to come and talk to you a little bit. Well, I had to be here anyway, but I'm going to talk to you today about rural housing incentive districts. So you might be confused by the name rural, like why are we talking about this in the city of Topeka? And so this is a special economic development tool that is not new to Kansas, but it is new to the city of Topeka. And the 2022 legislative session, the city of Topeka was specifically added to this law. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about it just so that you understand the legal parameters because it is a new tool that is available to the city of Topeka if you would like to use it. How do I move forward with the mouse?
Mr. Wade might have to do it for you. Right. Or to do that.
There you go. Oh. There we go. Okay. So today I'm just going to give you a brief history of it, tell you about what an RHID is, and how does it work, and then next steps if this is something as a governing body you would like to pursue. So the easiest way to describe what a rural housing incentive district is to talk about it in terms that you're familiar with. Basically, this is what is known as a residential TIF. And so rural housing incentive districts first became law in Kansas in 1998, so they are not new to our state. Originally, they were limited to cities with populations less than 40,000 and counties with populations of under 60,000. The legislature has played with those numbers several times over the last decade or so, and most recently included the city of Topeka as an eligible unit to have an RHID. The express purpose of the act is to look for areas of our state where there is a lack of housing and try to create a new program that can help incentivize that. And so the goal is to encourage development and renovation of housing in rural cities and counties, and to allow cities to directly participate in the financing of those public improvements. So if a city wants to participate in an RHID, there is a process that they have to go through. The first is to create a housing needs analysis. The statute's pretty specific about what's needed in that, and we'll go through each of these steps pretty briefly. Next, the governing body passes a resolution finding that there are certain conditions in our community that make us ripe for an RHID. It goes to the Secretary of Commerce, who has to sign off on the creation of it. Then it comes back to the city to adopt a redevelopment project plan, establish the district, and then ultimately the project begins with development of houses. So the housing needs analysis must ultimately create 4 different findings. The first is basically that there's a shortage of quality houses at various price points in our community, despite the best efforts of public and private housing developers. That this shortage is expected to persist, and that additional financial incentives are necessary in order to encourage the private development and construction of housing. That this shortage is a substantial deterrent to economic development, and that the future economic well-being of the city depends on the governing body providing additional incentives to allow for the construction or renovation of housing. I will tell you that we did a housing study in 2020, and Director Fyander has looked and said that the housing study in 2020 would allow us to meet the requirements of the act. It might need some updating, but it is a great base to work off of. Once you make those findings, the governing body must adopt those in the form of resolution, decide how, and the resolution specific about you have to say why you made those particular findings. It then gets sent off to the Secretary of Commerce, who must evaluate and decide that he agrees with each of those findings. And then it comes back to the city to establish the district. The project plan for a district cannot exceed 25 years. There are lots of different project requirements. I'm not going to read them. You can read them later at your leisure. But the 2 that I want to highlight is that this definitely is a private partnership idea. So you work closely with developers that are building houses in order to have a project plan. But it's also a very open process. So developers that are looking to use this particular process come and present to the public and explain to the public why this is a good tool. It is all public, what kind of contractual assurances that the governing body has received from developers. And then most importantly, you do have to do a feasibility study that shows that ultimately these incentives, the value of what they bring to your community outweigh what you are potentially giving up in tax dollars. So it's a cost-benefit analysis that the public good outweighs any kind of public sacrifice. Ultimately, once you have a project plan, it comes before it can be adopted, it goes to a public hearing so the public can weigh in. Counties and school districts are notified about that. Ultimately, at the public hearing, you have a representative of the city that walks through the project plan, shows why it's a benefit, how it works, and then any developers that have been contracted with or that are part of the project plan must be actually present in the chamber and there to talk about their various projects and answer any questions. After that, the governing body can adopt the plan and pass an ordinance if they so choose. Very similar to a TIF, school districts and counties get a unilateral veto right over that if they find that it will harm either the school district or the county. So within 30 days, they get the option of evaluating that. So let's say all of that gets passed, you pass the ordinance, no one vetoes it. How are these financed? Very similar to a TIF, as you're familiar with. They can be bond financed or they can be pay as you go. Ultimately, the developer is seeking to be reimbursed for eligible costs that are incurred in the project, generally through your property tax increment. So very similar to a TIF, you set a base year, and then the city decides to forego that incremental value that is gained from the development, and then that is a negotiation. So how long you allow that increment to go depends on what is the value of the project, what is the cost benefit, the feasibility. It can be up to 25 years. It can also be shorter. You can also negotiate what percentage of your increment. So it's very much a negotiation with the city. Similar, like I just said, with the TIF, this is how the property tax works. You have a base year that is established when the district is established, and then the property taxes in excess of that can be used to pay off the bonds if it is a bond project or pay as you go. The state 1.5 mils are not diverted, the 20 mils for the schools are not diverted, but the capital outlay for schools can be included at the increment at the option of the city. Very similar to TIFs, the city can issue special obligation bonds to help with the project. These bonds can ultimately be paid back, very similar to a TIF, with the property tax increments. It could also be other revenue derived or held from the project. It could be other private sources. It could be from financial sureties of the developer or any other lawful city funds that can be pledged, such as franchise fees, for example, could be used. These bond proceeds, if you chose to go that route, can be used to acquire property for the developer, payment of relocation, site prep, water, sanitation, sewer, electric, lighting, paving, streets, sidewalks. If the RHID is in a downtown district, it can be used for certain structures more than 25 years in age if they are in a qualified census tract. So they can be used to redevelop downtowns. That's what they're being used for predominantly out in rural Kansas right now. The proceeds cannot be used for any construction of buildings or other structures to be owned or leased by the developer. So if the developer is actually going to own the property, they cannot use the bond proceeds for that. So ultimately, that's kind of the overview of an RHID. If the city decided that is something they wanted to pursue, the next steps would be looking at our housing study and seeing what needs to be updated to meet the housing needs analysis and proceeding from there. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions for City Attorney on the CID? Councilman Dober.
Would this include improvements already made to a subdivision, or is that outside of the scope of this?
It depends on how the project was structured. So if you had a subdivision, for example, that was sold to a new developer and it hadn't been completely developed, you could include those as acquisition costs. Ideally, or if you had a subdivision that hasn't been completely developed, it could be used for new portions of it. It generally can't be used to reimburse houses that are already built or infrastructure that's there, but there's other ways that it could be done depending on how the project plan was developed.
Okay, one more question.
Please.
Does this apply to outside of the city limits?
No, it is specific to the city of Topeka.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for the City Attorney? Yeah. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate it. We'll move on to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A is an ordinance introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran removing certain real property from Dynamic Core Redevelopment District. B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting Potman Place Association an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at C concerning noise prohibitions. C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting Topeka United an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at C concerning noise prohibitions. D is approval of a utilities contract for project engineering and design services with Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions Incorporated for replacing approximately 1,600 linear feet of 6-inch water main at Southeast Gemini Avenue and Southeast Aries Avenue for a fee not to exceed $68,000. E is approval of a workers' compensation claim settlement in the amount of $75,000 to resolve the claim on a full and final basis for a work-related injury sustained by an employee while engaged in normal work duties. F are minutes of the regular meeting of July 19 and the special meeting of July 26, and there are no applications.
Thank you. You've heard the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion from the body.
So moved.
Motion to accept. Need a second. Second from Councilwoman Ortiz. If you call the roll, please. I'll get you.
Gotta be quick.
Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser, Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
and Emerson.
Yes.
All right, we have 8 yes. Motion carries.
Motion carried, and we'll move on to action item number 4A. I have here, we have a couple gentlemen that wish to speak and comment on this item, Mr. Seth Wagner and Mr. Cody Foster. If you would like to approach the podium, sirs.
Thank you, members of the council, Mayor Pia, for your time tonight. I wish I had more time to prepare my remarks, but I was in meetings all day today, so probably will be a little bit more of a reader than a speaker. Yeah, these are some handouts of what we're going to be developing at 735 Kansas, and I'll pass that out to all the council. It disappoints me that I must be here this evening to get council approval to add a $2.5 million addition to downtown Topeka. An addition that's going to create over 40 jobs in our community. It's going to add well over $500,000 in payroll to the city of Topeka, and at least $250,000 in sales tax. As you're aware, the first goal of the developer is to always work with what you have. It saves time and money if the shelter that you have is something of value. That is not the case on this non-contributing and non-historical building at 735 South Kansas Avenue. Let me repeat that again, non-contributing and non-historic. The size of space is not conducive for a full-service restaurant, which is our goal. The only thing that could work in this space is a small sandwich shop, which the building has been in the past. Knowing that a full-service restaurant is the end product, the structure as is cannot support a second level or rooftop. Our structural engineer has identified that the existing steel frames cannot support an intermediate second level. The existing roof joists and steel frames are rated only for live loads. This will not support a rooftop, and significant reconstruction will need to take place. Finally, the existing basement walls are not sufficient to support 2 additional levels. The new basement will need to be reconstructed to make a full-service restaurant work. This non-contributing building is set empty for a decade. Most of the changes to the building were done in the 1980s. The Landmarks Commission would not approve the demolition of this non-historic building per the staff report and their charter. I'm again surprised and disappointed that we are here. The system that exists to develop in downtown Topeka is broken and in need of substantive change. It's a system that does not welcome with open arms economic development and progress. It has become misaligned from its original charter. Instead, it's an existing system that feels free to spend developers' money and time with no real recourse but to come to the governing body. It's keeping more buildings old and vacant in downtown Topeka than vibrant and developed. I ask for your vote tonight to support the demolition of 735 South Kansas Avenue and continue to move our downtown forward. Now I'll turn it over to Cody Foster for his comments on the matter. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, council members, mayor, city manager. So, one, I appreciate you considering this that we have in front of you. Seth, you can tell, is pretty passionate about it because he spends all day, every day dealing with this. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I want to share just some other concerns. But appreciate the countless hours you all put in trying to make the city better. First things first, as Seth said, the immediate reason we're here is we want to address you and request that you would approve the demolition of 735 Kansas. Seth laid out a little bit of the issues that we have there, and the city officials can confirm this, but the building does not contribute to the historic district and is not considered a historic building. On top of that, we believe that it has minimal economic impact potential for downtown Topeka. So we would like to demo it and replace it with this new 2-story building with a rooftop deck that you see here, which we believe would be the first full-service rooftop deck in downtown Topeka. The less immediate but more important thing I'd like to share with the council is this, that our system for development in Topeka is currently broken and needs to be fixed. 6 years ago, I convinced Seth to leave his cushy corporate job at Hills to come help me start developments in downtown, starting primarily with the Cyrus, but since then we've done the Pennant, Iron Rail, a complete remodel of the Columbian building, which is fully rented, 921 Kansas, and the Ryman's building, as well as several others that are in process. I think the challenge has been that neither of us really are or were ever developers. We had to figure a lot of these projects out on our own, figuring out how to make them successful, and assumed over the years that developing a commercial project was just difficult with lots of roadblocks and obstacles at the government level. It's only after we've been a part of 2 developments in other communities, both Lawrence and Kansas City, that we're able to see how broken the process in Topeka truly is. Candidly, if I didn't love Topeka and want to see it to continue to improve, and more importantly, if I didn't have the resources to hire Seth to spend all day, every day working on these projects, I would have quit developing in this city years ago. For years, we've heard Summit City leadership tell us they're working on improving things, but it's not gotten any better. And I hope with some of the recent leadership changes, we can finally improve that. Here's my concern. If we don't make significant changes to the process, we're going to pigeonhole development in this city to a few local developers that are well-financed and can afford to jump through all the hoops and added time and expense that they bring. In my opinion, Topeka will never become the city many of us know can be if that's what we settle for. I can't imagine being a small business owner trying to develop something in this town. Well, we kind of can because we take calls from a lot of them asking how Amy deals with these challenges. But more importantly, I believe we're going to limit any out-of-town investors if they have to go through what we go through. Topeka isn't that great of a market for developers yet. But if we make them jump through these hoops, they're going to take their money to other communities like Lawrence or Kansas City. I have a request for...
You still have a minute.
Okay. That's just the countdown. Got it. In fact, it's probably the reason we see so much more development taking place in those communities from out-of-town and out-of-state developers. We've done so many positive things in Topeka in the past 5 years, and it's been great to see the progress we've made. But we are behind on commercial development. The only big developments that have been done in Topeka are by local investors who not only love this community, but have the time and resources to patiently navigate all the roadblocks that they encounter. I don't want to spend your time tonight rehashing all the issues that we've had with this building, but needless to say, it's been set back 3 or 4 months minimum and incurred a lot of additional costs. I'd be happy to discuss it in private so you can understand just how bad the process truly is. This will be our last development until some changes are made, and I don't say that threatening, take our ball and go home. It's just, candidly, we're tired. We have to go through so many hoops on all these developments, and we want to be a part of the solution and make this easier for developers going forward. So tonight we're asking, on top of approval to tear down 735 Kansas, is to make it a priority to change the process. What can I request?
Do you need any more time? How much time do you need?
60 seconds.
A minute.
I move 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Do you have a second?
You can be done early.
A second by Councilwoman Ortiz. Call the roll, please. We can do it that way. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, go ahead, Cody.
Okay, so on top of asking you to give us approval to tear down 735 Kansas,
That was quick.
That was quick.
we ask that you would make it a priority to change our current processes. We'll soon have a new city manager in place, and I hope everyone on the council will make this a priority for the person stepping into that position. I know I speak for Seth also when I say we appreciate the work you've all done to improve our city, but there's a big opportunity to really take that next step as a community. And it's going to involve making some tough and smart decisions to create a more development-friendly community. There's going to need to be a deep dive into understanding both the processes and possibly some of the people that make it difficult to do business in this community. That's it. Thank you for your time and your consideration, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Okay. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, so tonight, we have 735 Kansas Avenue demolition request. The Planning Commission has supported demolition of the building. I do have the Director of Planning, Mr. Fyander, available to answer any questions if anybody has any questions. This is a vote. It takes 6 votes of the governing body to approve or the demolition of 735.
Okay. Councilwoman Ortiz?
Yeah, before we go any further, the clerk has not read that. I don't know how important that is. She has not read 4A.
She has not.
Go ahead and read it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. A is an appeal to the governing body for a determination that there are no feasible and prudent alternatives to demolishing the structure at 735 South Kansas Avenue, and that all possible planning has been done to minimize harm to the historic district.
Okay. Anything further? Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor.
Cody, what I'm about to do seems a little inadequate with your speech, but anyway, move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do I see a second?
Second.
Councilman Emerson, if you will call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
and Nager.
Yes.
We have 8 yes. Motion carries.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that I really appreciate everything that Mr. Foster and AIM Strategies have done for downtown Topeka and for Topeka in general. And I will tell you, I'm one of those ones that's been telling you for 3 or 4 years things are going to get better. So I apologize right now that things have not gotten better. But I can tell you what, I'm going to work for the rest of the time I have, at least in this office, making certain that, if processes need changed, they need change. If people need changed in those jobs, that needs changed. So I really appreciate all the work you guys have done and the investment in Topeka. Thank you.
If I may add as well, I was in a meeting today, and I heard it expressed again by another entity that their love for this city keeps them working for this city and continue to develop opportunities for the city. And I think, Mr. Foster, you've shown that, and I think that's true, that because of your ties and roots to this city, maybe another developer who didn't have those ties would not have continued that fight. So I appreciate what you have done in the past and hopefully what you'll do in the future. Councilwoman Ortiz, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I just want to say thank you to Cody and AIM for all that they have done, and I've heard you loud and clear. Nothing against Cody, but I hate to agree with Tony, but I'll work hard with Antonio to see what we can do on that end, because we've heard that for way too long, and maybe I've just sat in this seat for way too long, but it is something that we need to really look into. So I'll be on that board with Antonio, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Dover.
Thank you, Mayor. We've seen some success in fairly major changes, I think, in our property maintenance codes, and I believe it was called Changing the Culture of Property Maintenance, and really a good title, because I think that's where it's headed. Took a lot of work with that committee to get to where we are today with on that side of the house. I think it's time for a look and perhaps changing the culture of development in Topeka, and it seems like the appropriate committee would be the Infrastructure Committee. We do have the chairman of the Infrastructure Committee here, so I guess I would ask him to add at our next meeting an agenda item to begin that process. And I think as part of that, we can ask some of our good developers in Topeka to come, talk about some of the roadblocks they see. It should be a collaborative process. Part of our job is to protect the entire public, not just specific individuals. So we have to balance that among the idea that we want to grow this community. We want to grow this community. We've seen great growth on Kansas Avenue, and we really shouldn't be standing in the way. We should be doing our job, making sure that life safety issues are being addressed, and beyond that, we need to grow. I find it, reading through this material, I don't understand how the body that this was before it came to us, could deny the demolition but approve the building. God, that doesn't make sense to me. So something's broke, we need to fix it. Seems like a good place to start, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Emerson, thank you.
Councilman Dover, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and I will put that on our September meeting. We have one like next week already for August for some special, I forget what the issue is, but I will have that on a September meeting. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
If I can do a postscript on that too. For those who don't know, Cody has just done phenomenal things for us, and Cody and Seth, I can't thank you enough. I mean, he did the Cyrus, he understood that to have a hotel, you really ought to have at least 2 restaurants that people can walk out the door and go to. So he bought the buildings and developed them, and it works. He knows I'm down there all the time. But it's so fun to see people get it, to see having the sense when COVID was in place and the hotel was pretty well shut down and our local restaurants needed the business, that they simply, I mean, Lemons into Lemonade didn't have breakfast and told folks to go across the street to Julie's. Cody, your business sense and your investment, but your just understanding of how those things work is phenomenal and so appreciated. So thank you so much. Don't want to lose any of that, and hopefully we can ride high on the things you've done for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lesser.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't restate the obvious that my fellow council members have said in regards to how much Cody and his group have done for downtown Topeka and where we're at today. And I also agree and have been a vocal proponent of we have to make it easier for developers and for people to do business in Topeka. I know several, and I've been told of several others that just flat out won't come to Topeka because it's too hard to do business. I was actually even sent in regards to this issue. I was sent a Facebook page, and I actually did send that, or a Facebook post that had been made that I found inappropriate on this matter, and I had asked the clerk if that could be made available. I don't know if you had that or not, Brenda.
Yes, we do. Taylor's pulling it up now.
Yeah, this post was sent to me on Facebook, and this is bothersome to me. It's bothersome to me that this is posted before we're even here today to talk about this, and it's bothersome that it's posted by a member of the Landmark Commission in regards to this issue. I think it's highly inappropriate. The statement I have is if it's development wins again because Cyrus Hotel, because of Iron Rail, because of the Pennant, because of the plans on this, well, that to me, that Topeka wins again, is what that it says to me. When I received this, I would like an opinion from the city attorney on the appropriateness of a commission member posting in public on this before there's even been a vote on this, with the appropriateness of that is in regards to that capacity. Amanda.
While a commissioner could not weigh in on something before the commission had voted on it, post-commission First Amendment rights, they have the First Amendment right to say what they would like on the internet. The appropriateness of it is probably judged by every person in their own capacity, but after they voted on it, they have the First Amendment right, I suppose, to say whatever they would like.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Further comment on this item? Okay. Again, thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it very much, and the comments from the council. We'll move on now to action item 4B, And if the clerk would read, and then we do have somebody signed up for public comment on that.
B is an ordinance introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran concerning the Board of Building and Fire Appeals by amending section 2, 235-010 of the Topeka Municipal Code.
Okay, and we have Ms. Angela Sharp on Zoom, signed up for comment.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor and City Manager. I am Angela Sharp, and as the chair of the Board of Building and Fire Appeals, I'm speaking tonight on behalf of my fellow members as well. I'd like to start by saying that we greatly appreciate your consideration of this item, and we're in strong support of this revision. We would offer the following justification for that support. The BBFA is organized of members with specific licensure requirements. Our board bylaws require at least 2 each of architects, structural engineers, and commercial building contractors. Topeka has and always has had a limited number of structural engineers and architects that work and live within the city limits. That segment's participation within the BBFA is critical, as we're charged with reviewing appeals cases concerning the City of Topeka building codes. The majority of cases reviewed by the BBFA are in regard to structural and life safety appeals, both of which require the expertise of licensed structural engineers and architects for review. The current residency requirement has hampered the ability to recruit members with the necessary qualifications, and we have therefore been operating with a vacancy on our board for literally years that has been impossible to fill. Allowing an individual that may not have their home within the city limits but has the required expertise for service and has a commitment to our community by working for a business that does lie within the city limits would provide an additional pool of volunteers for service on our board. The proposed amendment to the residency requirements for BBFA service is critical to maintain the integrity and effectiveness of the BBFA, and we respectfully request your support. I would stand for any questions you might have for me.
Seeing none. Any questions? There you go. Any questions from the Zoom attendees? Okay. We'll move forward. Councilman Emerson?
Sorry, the button's kind of messed up on this microphones. I did have a question. First of all, I'm in support of this. However, I did have a question for the city attorney, and I apologize, I did not talk to you about it ahead of time, so this will truly be a random question thrown at you. I find it very interesting that we allow employees to live in the city or the county right now, and I know there's a thing coming next week to talk about opening that up, but it's funny that you can live in the county if you want to get paid by the city, but if you want to volunteer for the city, you got to live in the city, and that doesn't make any sense to me. Is that just the way some of these boards are written?
I guess my answer is probably not a legal answer necessarily. It's just a fundamental historical policy answer. Traditionally, the argument has been if you want to make decisions for the taxpayers in regards to things like a zoning boards or making legislative policy choices that you should live inside the city limits. That goes back decades, similar to employee residencies, which historically were inside cities. So it's probably a policy choice. Boards like libraries, for example, that have taxing powers, traditionally, cities have very strongly encouraged that they have to live in the taxing district at the ability to increase or decrease somebody's taxes. But it's just a historical context and a policy choice for a governing body.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess a follow-up question would be, and again, I support this, however, on line 15 and 16, it says, well, 14, 15, and 16, it says, however, a candidate who is otherwise qualified but does not reside in the city may be appointed if the candidate resides in Shawnee County and is employed or operates a business within the city. And I guess my only thing is, what if they live here but they work for a thing in Lawrence? Can't we still use our expertise? So I wonder why we even have that in there, I guess.
Yeah, Councilman, this was basically a compromise in the aspect that when this request was made by this board and we received a letter on it, at the time, you had to live within the city limits of the city of Topeka and serve on this board. And so they did not really want to go away from that, but what they wanted to do was expand the possibility that if everything's been exhausted, you can't find anybody qualified that lives in the city limits that wants to serve on this board, that at least they live in the county and they work for a business that is operated or employed here in the city of Topeka. And so it does kind of keep the residency somewhat intact, but it is one of those things that I'm assuming amendments can be made, and we can go from there.
Yeah, because I guess, forgive me a little bit, but if you're a structural engineer who wants to volunteer your time to help out, it's not a matter of opinion usually, right? They're basing something on their engineering. And so I guess somebody please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. I guess Councilman Dober on that, but I don't see why if you're a structural engineer who's willing to volunteer your time, it shouldn't matter if you, as long as you live here, if you work wherever, I don't know.
Councilman Dover?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I have a couple of thoughts. One is if you live here, if you work in the city of Topeka in that profession, you're at least going to be more familiar with the codes and the local codes that you may not be if you're in Lawrence or Kansas City. And the second thought is simply, this gets us part of the way. You know, maybe we see if this works. If this gets us the candidates we need, then great. If not, maybe we come back and open it up a little bit more.
Yeah. Further questions? Councilwoman Hiller?
Not really a question, but a comment. I've tried to be diligent about helping to do these appointments ever since I've been on council. But when you get something as specific as these trade boards, it's really the staff who knows who the people are who live and work in the city. And so we've had to rely on them, and I appreciate the feedback from staff. If there just aren't enough folks to choose from or to be able to rotate younger people in to begin to get experience in these roles, it seems like it's about time, and I'm willing to move approval.
Okay. We have a motion.
Shall we read it first?
She read it.
Did you?
Second.
Turn it.
I guess.
She's got it.
I guess I need to wake up.
Okay. Motion to approve by Councilwoman Hiller. Motion to second by Councilman Emerson. If you will call the roll vote, please.
Looks like council members Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
We have 7 yes, motion carries.
Did you get Kel?
We have
Is he on now?
Yeah.
Councilman Kell.
Councilmember Kell?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 8 yes. He logged on. Thank you.
Fake TV.
Hey, we'll move on now to action item 4C, City Manager. Oh, Brenda, would you read first, please? Thank you. Get me out of sync.
C is a resolution introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran authorizing and directing the issuance, sale, and delivery of $5,250,000 in the aggregate principal amount of general obligation temporary renewal and improvement notes series 2022B, providing for the levy and collection of an annual tax if necessary for the purpose of paying the principal of and interest on said notes as they become due, making certain covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain other documents and actions connected therewith.
Thank you. City Manager.
Yeah, at this time, this is to discuss our bonds. We have Rochelle from Finance Department who can address any questions. And I know this is topic C, but C, D, and E basically would be the same type of conversation. And we also have bond counsel available to answer any questions as well. But I will turn it over to Rochelle at this point.
Thank you, City Manager. We have before you tonight a resolution to issue the $5,215,000 in 2022B general obligation temporary notes. These will fund 4 special assessment projects and 1 facilities project that are still under construction. For this sale today, the city received 4 competitive bids, with the winning bid of 2.19% coming from Fidelity Capital Markets. In addition, as city manager noted, We have an additional issuance of $16,715,000 in 2022B generally obligation bonds. These bonds will permanently finance 4 special assessment projects, 3 traffic projects, 1 facilities project, 1 public safety project, 1 street project, and the first tranche of the Polk Quincy Viaduct. For this sale, we received 5 competitive bids on this bond with the winning rate of 3.07% from Robert W. Baird. And as city manager noted tonight with us, we have Kevin Cowan from Gilmore and Bell, who is the city's bond counsel. Additionally, we have Kaylin Dwyer from Columbia Capital, the city's financial advisor, should there be any questions for them. And with that, I would stand for any questions from the body.
Questions from the body for Rochelle? I have a motion to approve by Councilman Dobler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Emerson. When you're ready, Brenda, will you call the vote?
Councilmember Lesser?
Yes.
Mayor Padilla?
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller? Yes. Ortiz?
Yes.
Emerson?
Yes.
Kale?
What?
Can you guys see this?
I don't know.
Can they see it out there? Okay, good.
Councilmember Kale? Yes. Yes.
I think that's a yes.
Councilmember Nager?
Yes.
Dobler?
Yes.
And Duncan?
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to action item 4D, and as the city manager indicated, they're attached or related, but would you read?
D is an ordinance introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran authorizing and providing for the issuance of $16,715,000 aggregate principal amount of general obligation bond series 2022B of the city of Topeka, Kansas, providing for the levy and collection of an annual tax for the purpose of paying the principal of and interest on said bonds as they become due, authorizing certain other documents and actions in connection therewith, and making certain covenants with their respect thereto.
City manager, do you have anything? Okay.
I move approval.
Move approval by Councilman Emerson. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Dobler. Please call the roll.
Mayor Padilla?
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller? Yes. Ortiz?
Yes.
Emerson?
Yes.
Kale? Yes.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Nager?
Yes.
Dobler?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
And Lesser.
Yes.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yes, and Councilmember Lesser.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Motion has been carried. Move on to action item 4E. Again, related to the two previous. If you would read, Brenda.
E is a resolution introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran prescribing the form and details of and authorizing and directing the sale and delivery of $16,750,000 aggregate principal amount of general obligation bonds, Series 2022B of the city of Topeka, Kansas, previously authorized by the ordinance of the issuer, making certain covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain other documents and actions connected therewith.
Okay, we've heard the resolution read. It's related to the previous two. Is there a motion? A move to approval by Councilman Dobler and a second by Councilman Emerson. If you call the roll, please.
Councilmember Hiller? Yes. Ortiz?
Yes.
Emerson?
Yes.
Kale?
Yes.
Nager?
Yes.
Dobler?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Lesser?
Yes.
And Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Motion being carried, we'll move on to action item F. If the clerk would read.
F is a resolution introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran, providing notice of public hearing concerning the establishment of the South Topeka redevelopment district pursuant to KSA 12-1770 at SEEK as amended.
City Manager.
Mayor, governing body, if everybody recalls, we actually started work on South Topeka area with the White Lakes demolition project. That is moving along very well. We are now to the point where we've been requested by potential developers to establish a TIF district for that area. It did pass the TIF council to be moved forward to the governing body for consideration of a TIF. This is the open hearing for that, and we do have the sponsor of the TIF, the Greater Topeka Partnership, represented by Mr. Curtis Sneeden, if you would please come forward. I asked him to come forward specifically if there's any specific questions that anybody may have, and there is a proposal on the size of the district, right? Or not?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Checking with the body, would you want to start with any questions or ask Mr. Sneeden to go ahead and give his presentation? Curtis, if you'd move forward.
Mr. Mayor, Curtis Sneeden, President of the Greater Topeka Chamber of Commerce and Senior Vice President with the Greater Topeka Partnership. You know, in late 2019, a group of local leaders came together to bring back the boulevard. Their efforts have yielded results, and they have focused intensively on that part of town, which many of us have pretty fond memories of, depending on how long we've lived here. It has fallen largely into disrepair with some very important exceptions, but there are big swaths of that South Topeka Boulevard zone which have become blighted, and the Bring Back the Boulevard folks have worked very hard. They've achieved some good results, and we're seeing some movement. Some properties are being cleaned up. White Lakes is being demolished. We're delighted to see the KTA is putting in their new building down in that area. And so, as the interim city manager noted, a group of developers has come forward to indicate their heavy interest in trying to develop in that area in order to facilitate that and send a strong signal that the city is eager to encourage that type of activity. We are sponsoring the application for a redevelopment district in that area. We'll talk about the area in a moment because that's a key variable tonight that I want to walk through very clearly with you here. But the main point is that tonight you're being asked to put on for a public hearing on September 13th the question of whether to establish this as a redevelopment district. Once this area is thus established, that'll be your way of encouraging and inviting developers to step forward with their project plans and negotiate with the city to potentially utilize the tax increment financing mechanism to help facilitate their development. As I noted, this isn't particularly speculative. There are known developers who are quite eager to get started out there, and their vision is pretty inspiring. We're looking at new retail. We're looking at potential dining, entertainment, a range of possible uses in the area. So let's talk about the area. There was a map attached to our application, and just to verbalize it very roughly, it looks a little like an arrowhead that runs from the boulevard over to Kansas Avenue. On the north side, it's bounded by 29th Street. It goes on down south past White Lakes, past Blind Tiger on 37th, and it culminates in that point where Kansas Avenue swings around and intersects Topeka Boulevard, roughly where the KTA building is. That was the original concept for this development district. Part of the reason it's drawn that way is that area exists within an enterprise zone as defined in 1992. And the way the Kansas statutes for these types of districts are written, those old enterprise zones are de facto eligible for treatment this way. Otherwise, if this area weren't within an old enterprise zone, we'd have to hire a study and have a specialist tell us the area is blighted, something we're all quite well aware of. So it's a convenience that we're able to utilize that enterprise zone, and that's part of the reason the map was drawn that way initially. We've had a fair amount of discussion around this and come to realize that our immediate objectives can as well be satisfied by establishing this area on a smaller scale. So I'm not exactly sure procedurally how this will play out, but I wish to express to you the applicant's willingness to entertain a revision of that map to wit, rather than running all the way to 29th Street, we would still be accomplishing our objectives if, roughly speaking, the area that was bounded on the north by Croy Avenue between Kansas and Topeka. We are also hopeful that you will agree that the area should, once it gets to Topeka Boulevard, run a little bit north up to 32nd Street so that it takes in the old Richmond Gordon store and the strip center that is called Bellevue. So it's a much smaller arrowhead, if you will. It captures the area which is of the greatest focus, that White Lakes area, that strip center called Bellevue, and maybe most agonizingly at all, that area on down to the south where we've seen a lot of fairly nefarious activities, a fairly troubling lack of development down there. If you can put your stamp on this and establish that area, we are quite confident that entire zone will be turned into something that the city can be proud of and will be quite the entryway coming into the city from the south. So I can see on the screen in front of me the revised map. I guess, and I think you all have copies.
We do, yeah.
Okay, so the point is, we would have no objection if one of you proposed to amend this district such that it encompassed the area bounded in red on that map, less the area that's cross-hatched in black. We would appreciate your consideration of that, and I think the way it would work is that if that amendment gets made in the public hearing in September would be about that smaller district.
Okay. Any questions for Curtis?
I'm sorry, not for Curtis, for the
Okay.
city.
Okay. City Attorney? If you'll stand, Curtis, just in case.
Yeah, so we have all been provided the map that Mr. Stephen was talking about. Is that what we need to do to make a motion to amend? But we haven't. Do we have to first vote to set the public hearing and then, I guess it's kind of funny amending something before we even consider it.
So first, the motion would be to approve the resolution, and then you would make a motion to amend the resolution.
Okay.
Then you'd vote on the motion to amend, and then vote on the resolution.
Yep.
Okay. And I guess my only question would be, and sorry for not asking this earlier, as you know, we were kind of doing this last minute, but does that include, is that just the outside of the strip center there, like the Bellevue, what you call it, or does it go to the next street over? It's hard to tell on the map. And I guess maybe the map doesn't control probably the legal description, right?
I think the last thing you said is the most accurate. I think the map goes down the street behind, which
Right.
is called, it's not.
It says Central Park Extended or something like
Yeah,
that.
but probably if we, I'm not sure I need it on there, but, yeah, it goes down the street behind that strip center.
Okay, and that street, that is included, and that is meant to be included.
The
Okay.
strip center?
And the street behind it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The eastern side of that street, okay. Just want to verify that. So,
Mayor.
City Manager?
And just for clarification, the properties on the west side of Topeka Boulevard are known as the Bel Air properties.
You're close.
Fresh Prince of
Just
Bel-Air.
for people.
Councilman Dobler?
I think regardless of what the legal description ends up defining who gets notified for the public hearing, is that correct?
No. So The resolution references the map. So whatever the map is, that's the proposed boundaries. And then the final ordinance has the official legal definition. So whatever map is attached to here, to the resolution you pass, is what the proposed district will be.
Sure, I totally understand that. I mean, this map's about a 1 in 2,000 scale, so.
So, and we can change, we can change the resolution, but currently the resolution references the map in Exhibit A. So if we're changing the map in Exhibit A, that's what it's referencing as the proposed boundaries.
You'll figure it all out, right?
Yes, if you give me some leeway, I will figure it all out. Just give a little bit of leeway.
So I guess, Mayor, then to get this ball rolling, I would make a motion to approve the resolution right now.
Okay, have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I had a question, Mr. Mayor.
Oh,
Several of us had hands up for a while.
okay, I'm sorry, couldn't see. Who spoke? Councilman Lesser or Councilman Kell?
Me, sir. So on that crosshatch area, is that going to be eliminated from the original map?
The question is, the cross-hatched area, is that the area that is being eliminated?
Yes, sir, I think that would be the amendment, is that area would simply not be in the established redevelopment district that is at hand right now. It wouldn't change the legal standing or the eligibility of that area for TIF later or for property owners there to access the neighborhood revitalization program. There's nothing negative happening there, just what you'd be establishing would not include that.
Okay.
Well, my main concern is that has become our major issue of concern out of the whole original map. That was what I was most intrigued by, where there are people that are looking into those properties that are being issues right there, and now to kind of cut that out as of right now, we're running into an issue of, well, we're going to look at that problem later almost, rather than deal with the problem where someone's willing to come in and buy out the problem properties and develop those problem properties. I'd rather have those included in there so those can be taken care of right now and not have to come back and do this again later to address those issues.
If you have a response.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Kell's comment, and certainly any of us who have driven around up through there would likewise note that there are some ripe areas in there for development. I think that the point was, it is important to keep in mind that this area is also within the neighborhood revitalization program area. And it is not possible for the NRP and a TIF district to coexist because they both involve a refund of property taxes, and you can only give any given dollar of property taxes back once. So it is important to be careful about rolling out a TIF district because there are some risk of sort of covering, blocking access to certain property owners to a program, the NRP, which might have been more favorable for their purposes. That's part of the reason why, following a fair amount of discussion, we felt it was appropriate on this go-around to focus on these more immediate areas. Now, to Mr. Kell's concern, there would be nothing stopping a future developer or even the partnership if the conditions presented themselves to seeking establishment of some other area in that northern part as a development district also. So again, I don't think we're not setting that area back or depriving them of anything. We're just being focused in what we're trying to accomplish now.
A question I have, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, did you have a hand up?
You did.
Okay.
First of all, we have a motion on the floor. I would like to second it so we can have discussion.
All right, thank you. All right, motion and second.
After your comment, I have a comment. Had my hand up for a little bit.
Okay, motion and second, under discussion. Deputy Mayor.
Well, then I'd like to go ahead and make the second motion to amend the map to the one presented here by Mr. Sneeden. And if there is a second, then I have a comment that relates to that and the entire vote.
Second.
Okay, motion to amend to this map that is being presented by Mr. Sneeden, seconded by Councilman Emerson. So we'll vote on that amendment. So if you'll call the vote.
He wanted discussion.
Oh, discussion? Okay,
He
sorry.
wanted to talk.
All right, go ahead. Discussion, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, I wanted to thank Mr. Sneeden for the amended map. I don't know if I was the only council member who spoke to him. I was on the group that forwarded this on to the governing body with a yes vote, but I told that committee when we met that with respect, this was a little too large coming out of the gate. We're not making a decision on this TIF tonight. The public hearing will give us time to have that discussion about TIFs in general and projects out there, and whether this is a good or bad idea. But my initial concern was it was a very large district that didn't have included areas that have no projects ongoing at this time. And, I think us just making these huge, large TIF districts we got to be careful. So I just want to say thank you. I did make the request, so I'm more willing to vote to put this to hearing with this amended map than without it. So thank you to everybody who worked on it.
Councilwoman
Thank you,
Hiller.
Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Sure. I hadn't raised my hand yet, but I'm good.
saw you
Thank
going
you
for it.
for everybody's comments. I agree. I am very excited about the interest and excitement that I'm hearing about regarding the businesses wanting to develop. And I'm totally supportive of declaring some boundaries of a redevelopment district to help move that along. I will say in advance that I think once we settle on that at the public hearing, I think that's all we need to do. Anybody that wants to do a TIF project has to pick where they're going to do it. There's a but-for requirement. Those are huge projects. They are layered. They've got to justify their project and their chosen boundaries. And so, and tonight, for instance, we exempted 5 properties from the TIF district downtown. That's all we've done with that district since it started. And echoing Cody Foster's comments earlier, even with the best of intentions, we don't want to cause extra bureaucracy for our staff and our developers and extra time. And I really think that this forced me to review and reread our TIF ordinance and our procedures and so on again. I think with this, we're sending the message loud and clear that we've carved out that district and we're ready to go. It's wonderful that the GTP has stepped up to pay the fee to get that filed. And as long as, if we need language, city attorney that acknowledges that fee's paid and so they don't have to do it again inside that small district, if they choose to file for a TIF project, I think we'll be done and nobody will have to wait for anything else. We just go. As Deputy Mayor said, that intervening time before the hearing would give us time to make sure about that. But thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. Thinking back a little bit to Councilman Kell's question, so if I'm not mistaken, a TIF district, the proceeds can only be used for things exterior to the building. The NRP allows you to use some of those proceeds for the actual renovation of the building. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, the NRP may fit most of what's north of White Lakes a little bit better because there's a lot of buildings that just really need to be rehabbed, not completely demolished and starting over. So if anybody's wondering, if people are getting excluded here, they're really not. They have a good vehicle available for renovation of those buildings. Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Further questions before we vote on the amendment? No questions? Okay. We'll vote on the amendment on the new map that's attached to this resolution.
Councilmembers Ortiz?
Yes.
Emerson?
Yes.
Hale?
Yes.
Nager?
Yes.
Dobler?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Lesser?
Yes.
Mayor Padilla?
Yes.
And Hiller?
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. I want to thank Mr. Seaton for coming and giving the presentation.
That's the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's true. Okay.
And you already have a motion on the floor, so you
I'm
just.
thanking him for the amendment.
All right.
Taking that next step.
This
All right.
motion is to approve as amended, so we'll start with Councilmember Emerson.
Yes.
Hale. Councilmember Kell.
Yes.
Nager.
Yes.
Dobler.
Yes.
Duncan.
Yes.
Lesser. Councilmember Lesser.
Yes.
Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. The motion is carried. And again, I appreciate the comments and the discussion here and the willingness to work to get us to where we can look forward to the possibilities that exist out there in South Topeka Boulevard. Thank you very much. Move on to action item G, if the clerk would read.
G is approval of the 2023 Social Services Grant Allocation Recommendations in the amount of $434,904.
City Manager?
Mayor, governing body, this is the social service grant scoring and funding allocations. It was moved forward by the Social Service Committee on a vote of 3-0 to move in front of the governing body for consideration. It does take 6 votes for approval, and I believe Councilwoman Hiller would be available for any questions if people have. So,
Councilwoman Hiller?
If I can give just a brief report on what you have.
Yes.
Everybody's got the packet, thank you. The transmittal with the recommendations, which again did pass 3-0. It was all set per our procedures based on the scores that those applications received. Those were reviewed by an expert panel whose identities are not disclosed by United Way, and that process was managed by United Way again this year. There was great work done by the committee. My colleagues on the committee are Councilwoman Nager and Councilman Kell. This year, United Way, everyone, it appears the agencies as well as the committee felt like that went well. And certainly we had excellent participation and on our whole process, and then excellent contributions from the agencies. The July 8th minutes that were attached document the acceptance of the work of the United Way scoring team. As you know, we do offer the agencies a chance to appeal. United Way has offered to work with them as they get their applications together, but then if they have questions about the scores, they're welcome to do that. If they choose to appeal, they may. We did hear 3 appeals on July 22nd. In all cases, those were execs or grant writers who were new to the process. They did have some questions. All those back and forth are detailed in the minutes if anybody wants to read them and didn't look at them. We've kept that process in to make sure everyone is heard, and if there were any mistakes or oversights in the scoring process, that those got caught and we had a chance to address them. The committee's choice was to leave the scoring as it was, and so what you have before you then is a recommendation to award $434,904 in the 2023 budget to those agencies. That is the number that we started with. That is allocating 100% of the funds that were provided. And with that, I would move to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilwoman Nager. If you will call the vote, please.
If there's
Any discussion?
Questions?
Any? Councilman Emerson?
No discussion. I just wanted to thank the committee for their work. I've served on this a couple of years. I know how much work it is, and you guys agonize over the scores and making sure. Yeah, so really appreciate all the work of the committee.
And I wanted to make sure and invite my colleagues from the committee if they had any comments to add.
Councilwoman Nager, do you have some comments?
No, as usual, Councilwoman and Chair Hiller covered everything. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Kell, if you still where the buffalo roam, are you?
No, I think Councilwoman Heller covered everything, and and kind of helped educate me, being new to the committee, on what was going on with everything.
Okay, thank you. And to echo Councilman Emerson's comments, I served on that committee as well, and I know it takes a lot of work, and you want to give everything to everybody, but you have to be practical in the solution that you come to in the end. So thank you very much, all of you, for that work. So now we have a motion and a second. Call for the vote, please.
Okay, council members Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
council members Hiller,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
and Emerson.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
And that completes our action items that I have on my list, unless it's been updated at the last minute again. We'll move on to non-action items, 5A, if the clerk would read.
A is discussion regarding the 2023 City of Topeka legislative agenda.
City Manager.
Mayor and governing body, one of the things that I believe the governing body made well known, but also is one of the feelings of myself and the city attorney, that we needed to be more aggressive with our legislative agenda and be on top of things sooner than we have in the past. And so that's kind of the point where we're at. I believe Deputy Mayor Duncan has some comments, but I do have staff available. I have Whitney Dameron available to answer any questions as well. But we're excited to be where we're at this point.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Dameron? Any question?
Mayor?
Duncan.
Oh, there, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. The Policy and Finance Committee took a look at this. You're going to see this again. Obviously, the session doesn't start until January, but we wanted to, one of the conversations we had last year, obviously, was getting this in front of everybody sooner so that you folks could see it, the public could see it. You guys now have several months to look at it and say, oh, what's not on there? Does this make sense? What should we add or subtract as we get closer so that we're not scrambling at the last minute right before the session starts? The biggest thing, though, on this that I want everyone to know is on here, and one of the reasons we wanted this brought tonight to review was the League of Kansas Municipalities will hold their legislative meeting at the end of August. But one of the things we want to put on their agenda as something to change is change in the liquor law, which would change common consumption areas. Right now, the very short version is a community could have an area, a public area, people could walk around with alcohol for special events. We as municipalities in the city of Topeka would at least like the option under state law to make areas more permanent or at least wider times of a year. So for instance, if we wanted downtown during the summer, during certain nights, to be able to walk from Iron Rail across to Evergy or a few blocks downtown, state law doesn't even allow us the flexibility to have that discussion at this governing body and make rules to decide if we want that. We're going to go to the legislature and ask for that discretion. We're hoping to get other municipalities on board. So that is part of this. And we wanted it in front of you folks tonight so that we can get approval and an okay to take it at the end of August to the League of Municipalities to say, hey, who wants to join the battle on this? So that's one reason too, is in front of you this evening. So I just wanted to say that was the big one on here, and the rest of this, we will continue to have conversations before the session starts in January.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Any further questions or comments for Deputy Mayor? Okay, we'll move on.
I have a hand up.
Oh, I couldn't, gotta go like this. Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Hiller.
Two, maybe three comments. One, I really think you've done a great job. I like the way it's laid out. I like the content of what's been put in the draft. So with that exception on that, been involved since we started. Second point would be regarding this common consumption proposal. When we first started talking about doing downtown, we talked about getting something like this to be a high priority. The language in this one is so simple, and if we can get that passed, it gives us a lot of flexibility without having to put up barricades and fences and things like that. So good job for whoever put this together, and I'm certainly comfortable with us supporting that at the league meeting in a week or two, whenever that is. And the third question I have is sort of across the table to City Attorney. In the Public Health and Safety Committee's work on change our culture of property maintenance, we've identified that action of the state legislature regarding LLCs has made it hard to do business with them or to deal with them when things aren't going well in a municipality. And City Attorney has an ordinance prepared for us to do locally to address that. But I wanted at this point to say if there was something that we could or should be suggesting to our colleagues at the league meeting about whether it'd be a good time to try and do something with that state legislation as well. I don't know the particulars of exactly what that would be, but I would certainly support it.
The issues that you guys are all very familiar with LLCs and code and getting them to come municipal court, can be handled at the local level through a home rule ordinance. At the state level, they do have statutory authority to sue LLCs in absentia or prosecute them. We don't have that in our local city code. At this point, I think it would probably be best to handle that at the local level than go to the state, because sometimes that tends to backfire on us when we go ask for state permission for stuff. But our lobbyist is here to weigh in on that if he has particular thoughts.
Whitney Cameron, lobbyist for the city of Topeka. I appreciate the question from the city attorney. Historically, I find it better not to ask the legislature.
Okay, we just wanted to make sure we've done in our deep dive into how to address these issues. We're looking more at doing more in municipal court than we did before, but we also have district court, which we need to be able to use. And if our local, again, we're working on the fine tuning of the end of our legal report now, but I just didn't want to miss that chance if there was something we should be addressing.
So. If I could offer a follow-up comment on the common consumption area. I know we met with the subcommittee chaired by Deputy Mayor Duncan and Councilman there. We have already started, Amanda and I have started outreach to other municipal lobbyists, and there's actually a league municipal lobbyist meeting on Thursday where they come in and meet with the league, the other contract lobbyists and in-house lobbyists, have a meeting to talk about the issues that they want to present to these other subcommittees that the league hosts in the next 30 to 45 days. So we're going to broach that subject. And actually, probably the bigger promoter for common consumption may not be other cities, but it could be developers. We have obviously no-toes driving this in North Topeka. The businesses along Kansas Avenue downtown are driving the issue here. They have an interest in this. I'm talking to a developer in Mexico that's very interested in this now, which is always expressed interest in this. Sometimes they have a bigger voice or stick with people in the municipals. See how best.
Councilman Dover?
Thank you, Mayor. Since you're up here, Mr. Dameron, once we get through the craziness of November, early November, do you see anything out there in the upcoming legislative season that is of particular concern to municipalities, the city of Topeka?
Well, you know, from the standpoint of the budget issues and budget pressures back on local municipal government and, shifting of state expenditures or obligations down to the local level, don't see much of that because the state's in good financial shape. Obviously, a lot of things depend on who the governor is and whether it syncs up with a new governor and a Republican legislature, or if you continue to have a dynamic Democrat governor, Republican legislature. Transportation seems to be proceeding well with projects. I know they've had a big project in Golden Park Lake area, 69 project. I believe that was delayed because the costs are higher than they anticipated, is my understanding. So they delayed that bid. You're probably seeing that at the municipal level as well as other KDOT projects as inflation is impacting those budgets. But I believe commitments remain to continue with the I-Transportation project as designed. Obviously, things are happening here in Topeka and Polk Quincy. So as far as potential positive or negative ramifications on the city of Topeka or what we use, none apparent yet. Only about typical issues we deal with.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Further questions for Mr. Dammer? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That subject of public consumption, Deputy Mayor and I have been familiar with that topic for some time. From my time at the state and ABC, let me clear that up. Not walking around the streets with an open beer, but from my time at the state at the ABC, he and I had discussions about that, and I'm glad to see that they're giving some attention to it. So we'll move on now to non-action item B, if you would read.
B is discussion related to the City of Topeka 2023 operating budget.
City Manager.
Mayor, governing body, this is a continuation of what we've been, I think, our third round of presentations and discussion on the 23 proposed budget. And with that, I will turn it over to Director of Finance, Mr. Steve White.
Thank you, City Manager. We've been having Adam Vaughn serve as your tour guide through the 2023 operational budget. And Adam will continue that tonight, leading off with HR.
Thanks. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, governing body. As Steve mentioned, we'll start with our Human Resources Department. And as previously, I'll go through a quick financial overview for each of the departments and then turn it over to the department directors. The HR department has a total budget of $19.8 million. This includes $1.9 million in the general fund, $2.2 million in the workers' compensation fund, and $15.7 million in the group health insurance fund. So you'll find in the funds section of the budget on page 173 and the entirety of all the risk funds that the city manages. So beyond the workers' compensation and the health insurance fund, you'll also find property and vehicle insurance, a risk reserve account, and an unemployment compensation fund. So again, that's on pages 173. It's the total risk funds. And these pages in the budget, the Human Resources Department, pages 87 through 90. So FTE-wise, the department has remained flat from the 2022 budget. A couple expense highlights for contractual. You'll see a large increase. That's mostly due to health insurance. There are a couple other items of note. There is $100,000 that has been put into the HR budget for recruiting. The annual fire physical has been back to pre-COVID levels, and there's been some other training opportunities that has been restored to funding levels that were available before COVID. On the personnel side, there's a $75,000 increase, which is just a centralization of where we are paying our citywide interns from. And then there's the 10% pool for non-union employees that we've mentioned. And with that, I will turn it over to Director Russell.
Thank you, Adam. I'm going to go over a executive summary of the compensation study that McGrath Human Resources Group did for us prior to going into other parts of the budget.
So the background on this is that through the RFP process, we contracted with McGrath, and they started this study in November, December of 2022. Our current compensation program has been in place since 2016. Since that time, we have only increased our overall pay matrix by 1.5%. The pay plan was built on a merit-based system, and due to various economic reasons, COVID being a large factor, we have only had a 1% across the board increase to employees in this pay plan for 21 and 22. And this has contributed to the pay plan losing its market competitiveness, as it was heavily dependent on a merit-based system. And so, through the RFP process, we commissioned with McGrath. The city management and executive positions were compared to 18 comparable municipalities within our region. That study makes certain recommendations that take into account internal alignment with our other employee groups, as well as recommendations to ensure appropriate separation with our union salary structures, while maintaining an alignment with our external market. The study findings include that about 78% of our benchmark positions were below the average market minimum. 67% of our benchmark positions were found to be lower than the average market, while 33% of the benchmark positions were found to be within the acceptable average market. Just a sampling of classifications that were significantly below market for some perspective include positions such as our senior system developer, and that position was identified to be $9,300 in annual salary below the market. Our operations supervisors, which are spread across many departments across the city, about $8,200 below market. We have field operations managers, which are primarily in public works, that were about $12,000 below market in annual salary. So that's just to provide you with a sampling of the below market significance of some of those positions. The study does make certain recommendations, and those recommendations include updating the salary schedule with built-in separation between union and non-union positions, having employee placement on the salary schedule with at least the minimum for the salary grade of the position. That recommendation has an estimated cost of about $465,000. Further recommendation to place employees with differentiation in the same classification based on years of time in that position. That has an estimated cost of about $815,000. And then employee placement on the schedule where all employees receive at least a 3 to 5% increase, which has an estimated cost between $260,000 and $434,000. These costs have been built into the 2023 budget at the 3% level, minimum 3%. The study further recommends that the schedule should be adjusted annually for internal equity and union positions, as well as external market factors. An annual merit pool should be allocated for performance-based adjustments unless an employee is identified to be on a performance improvement plan. And that every 3 to 5 years there be a comprehensive market study similar to what we just went through to ensure competitiveness with the external market. So in conclusion, it is important to have a competitive management and executive salary structure to attract quality employees to fill our vacant positions, as well as retain experienced employees in existing positions. Recently, several municipalities within our area have also made salary increases, and I just provided a sampling here. Manhattan recently did an average of 14% phased in over 2.5 years, starting with a mid-year adjustment here in 2022. Riley County recently did 10.5% mid-year adjustment. Lawrence, for their 2022, did a 9%, and then their preliminary budget has 4.5% for 2023. And Shawnee County has implemented anywhere from 3% to 13% based on varying positions for 2022. For perspective, as of August 5th, which was last Friday, we have 31 vacant positions within our management and executive plan. So that does create challenges with workload and expeditious carrying out of operations. The total cost of implementing this study is approximately $2 million, and as I said a few minutes ago, it is included in the proposed budget that's been provided to you. So in conclusion, I would certainly stand for any questions you may have about this study.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Had a couple questions. The one that's freshest in my mind right now is, you say there are 31 positions vacant right now. About out of how many?
In the management pay plan, we have about 250 total.
Okay, so about 10%. Okay. Thank you. And the other question was, a thing that Adam presented at first. It had $100,000 in there. I think it said recruiting. Is that like money, like bonuses to give to people, or what? Can you explain what that is,
So the
please?
recruiting money that we are asking for is to better market our positions, work more with universities. There's fees for participating in job fairs and marketing materials. For example, we do basic with Indeed, but there are things that we can do to boost our ads and make them more specific to specific target audiences, and that has a cost associated with it. And we are trying to amp up our recruitment efforts to be more direct recruiting, but we don't have the budgetary means to do that within our current budget structure because our workforce needs have changed so much in attracting people. We need to change how we're contacting and reaching out to potential candidates.
Can I ask a follow-up, Mayor?
Councilman Emerson, and then Deputy Mayor Duncan.
Thank you. Just
We can't hear half of what Jackie says. Half of everything she has said, it just cuts out. I don't know if it's her mic, I don't know if it's...
Oh, okay.
I'm sure it was a great presentation, but most of us on Zoom just half of it. I have no idea what the answer to that last question was. She doesn't need to repeat it, but just letting folks know.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Emerson?
Probably the best presentation I've heard in my entire time here, so I'm sorry you guys can't hear it. But no, do you guys ever outsource? I mean, we've been doing the city manager search using outsource, companies that do this, I guess, for their entire business. Do we do that?
Typically, we do not. We have done it in the past for certain department level positions such as police chief and fire chief, but we have typically tried to do recruitment internally, but for hard to fill positions at the director level, we have done recruitment firms in the past, but it's been probably 2009 since we've used an external for anything other than the city manager position.
Is that something you guys would explore, or do you need authority from us, or?
We would have to have an RFP specific to do that, and we did leave a sentence in the RFP that we did recently for the city manager to open that up for other positions if needed. You might recall there was some discussion about that when we were developing that RFP. So we have a provision, but that is a year-long contract. So if we were going to do that into 2023, I think we would have to go out for a bid to have those services added to our table of things that we can use for recruiting positions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Deputy Mayor?
Jackie, is there anyone here tonight who conducted this report?
There is not. McGrath is not here in person this evening. We contemplated that, but ultimately decided just to go with the executive summary.
Okay, I do not doubt the conclusions of this study. I know that we have many positions to all of our city employees. We need to increase some of your pay. I know that. So my questions that I'm about to ask are not related to that. And I don't know if you can answer or not, Jackie, but when we look, okay, so the end result of these metrics are based on these comparable cities that we studied and what they're paying and their payments. I guess where I get confused is Kansas City, Missouri has a population of over 500,000. Lincoln, Nebraska has a population of 300,000 plus. Omaha, Nebraska has almost 500,000 people, and Wichita has 400,000. We also then have 4 zoos in there. I guess I don't understand why we think those 4 cities are comparable to us, considering they are so much larger and have such a different dynamic. And then I don't understand, since we don't operate our own zoo anymore, why we're using zoos as a comparable.
Deputy Mayor Duncan, to clarify the zoo, when we changed that arrangement, individuals that were within a certain time of being eligible to retire under the CAFR system have the option of staying within city employment or going to Friends of the Zoo employment. So we do still have a few employees that are city employees that work for the zoo. And as a result of that, just those specific zoo positions were compared to the zoos that were listed among those 18 cities. Likewise, some of the other cities that you mentioned, all of the cities, every municipality doesn't necessarily have all of the similar operations as City of Topeka. So to get a good comparable set of cities to compare certain positions to, we did have to utilize other cities that might be much larger than ours. I will use an example of all, like for water operations, all municipalities don't operate their own water services like we do. So to make sure that we have comparables, they did have to branch out to some of those other cities that might not be completely, as far as population, comparable to Topeka, but we were looking operationally to get a good comparable set for every position.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Thank you for the answer. I guess like I said, I understand where we're going and need to go, but I mean, obviously these populations that have larger revenue bases and can pay that because their budget allows it, gives us a different comparable based on what we're taking in those same departments. And that's my only concern with the sort of the final number, not the conclusion, but maybe some of the numbers. But I'd be happy at some point to either, have someone from the company, McGrath, send me something that explains that a little better, if that would help me or not. But I did take statistics, I do have a master's, but it doesn't mean I get it all the time. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Further questions for Jackie? Nager? I can't see her. Where is she? Councilwoman Nager? Councilwoman Hiller, we'll see if she comes
Quick
back.
question. This is the executive summary. If any of us want to see those specific comparables or recommendations, those are available to us.
As far as what we have here, this is the full report that we've received from McGrath. I do not have other source documentation. This is what they presented to us.
This may just be me, because I saw your post in advance and I'm looking at it now, but do we have access to the full report? That was my question.
This is the full report that we have received.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Nager, are you back online? Just want to make sure. There she is. Councilwoman Nager, did you have a question?
No questions for me, thank you.
Okay. All right. Councilman Lesser.
Yeah, it cut out. Did she say the presentation tonight was the full report we got?
The full report that we received is the report that I emailed to you all on Friday ahead of tonight's meeting.
Right, and this was just the conclusion of it, or the summary of it, I'm sorry.
Tonight, I tried to go over the highlights of the report and the recommendations in the PowerPoint presentation that I went through.
That's what I thought, it cut out, so I was making sure I heard right.
That's what I was asking too.
Further questions? Okay. City Manager?
Yeah, Mayor, the deputy mayor mentioned some other cities. The study did encompass 18 cities in total, or 18 other governing body entities that did it. Jackie, do you have a list of some of those additional cities?
Yes, I do. So all of the cities that the study looked at, and again, it's position specific. So, for example, if Independence, Missouri doesn't have water, then they wouldn't have been used for those field operations supervisors that are in the water area. But the total, all of the comparable organizations include Independence, Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri, Lawrence, Kansas, Lenexa, Kansas, Lincoln, Nebraska, Manhattan, Kansas, Olathe, Kansas, Omaha, Nebraska, Overland Park, Kansas, Shawnee, Kansas, Sioux City, Iowa, Wichita, Kansas, the Kansas City Zoo, Rolling Hills Zoo, Sedgwick County Zoo. Again, those would have only been specific to our few zoo positions, which include animal care manager and our veterinarian, as an example. Shawnee County, Kansas, the state of Kansas, and Wyandotte County Unified Government, Kansas City.
Okay. Councilman Dover, and then Deputy Mayor Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. You probably said this and I missed it, but the recommendations for pay increase in this report are included in the budget. Very good. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
That was my clarification question. Thank you.
Yes, sir, that we have a 10% pool in the 2023 operational budget. It is not allocated to specific individuals. It is a pool across the board. If the budget is approved by the governing body, we expect to reallocate that pool into departments once the analysis is completed.
Okay, Councilman Dover?
Thank you, Mayor. Could you state again, we've had a 1% increase for our employees since 2017?
To clarify, Councilmember Dobler, the overall pay plan since 2017 has only been adjusted by 1.5%. Individual employees through the budget for 2021 received a 1% across the board increase, and 2022 also received a 1% across the board increase. But the salary schedule itself has only been adjusted by 1.5% since 2017.
And maybe for the finance director, inflation's running?
We're currently running about 8 points.
Okay. Whenever we get to the point to talk about salary adjustments in this 2023 budget, I'll certainly be in favor of getting us to the point where we can be competitive. We have folks here that do a great job. I guess, competition's all around us. You can live in Topeka and drive to Lawrence, and you can work for the state of Kansas. Shawnee County's made some huge adjustments in their salaries. We've got to address this. We have the ability to address it this year, and definitely needs to happen. So appreciate the work, appreciate the comparability study, and thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Further questions or discussion? Thank you very much. Stephen?
Mr. Mayor, if we're good, we'll go on with the rest of the HR department and go through that.
So governing body, the Human Resources Department is also responsible for various risk funds, and so I just wanted to provide you some information on those funds. And I'm starting with the health insurance fund. This slide just gives you a snapshot of what our claims have done since June of 2020. The green line that is on there is what we fund to. That's our expected expenses. The blue line that you see that has peaks and valleys are the actual monthly expenses. So what you're looking at there shows that since June of 2020, there have been 5 months since our expenses were greater than expected, but we have been running either below or very near expected in that time frame. So I just wanted to show you that as a snapshot. As we look at how the plan did through 2021, I just wanted to highlight a few things on this slide. And I'll talk mostly to the comments over to the right, but certainly if there's any other questions. On average, our plan per employee per year total cost has increased by 7% over the last 6 years. The benchmark average increase annually is approximately 10%, so our plan over this span has been increasing much lower than our benchmark. From 2015 to 2021, the average plan cost versus funding has been at 92%. So what that tells us is that we have been 8% lower than expected in our expenses, even based on what we funded to. Our City of Topeka health plans run approximately $1,000 per employee per year lower than our benchmark organizations. So I just wanted to share with that a little bit of highlights of how our plans are performing. And then just a little bit about our 2023 renewal, since you're focusing on the 2023 budget. For our health plans, medical and prescription drugs, we are looking at an overall 8% increase in our expected claims administration and claims expense. This is largely attributed to a 35% increase in our stop-loss insurance coverage. The stop-loss insurance is protections for us in our self-funding. For individual claims that exceed $200,000, we have insurance that kicks in and pays anything above that amount. And then for our group, if we have expenses on the health claims that exceed 120% of expected expenses, then the insurance pays all remaining expenses for that plan year. And so that insurance premium has a significant increase for us of 35% in our renewal that we've received. Other things contributing to this increase include that Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas is implementing a new shared savings fee of 2% of claims savings that we receive, not to exceed $1,000 per claim, but for our group, that is anticipated to be about $100,000 in 2023. There is an additional 2% claims fee that Blue Cross is imposing called a COVID claims impact adjustment that is impacting that increase. So those are the highlights of what are going into that 8% increase. This is budgeted and included in your budget, but I just wanted to kind of share with you what is driving the increase that we are looking at for 2023. I'll move into our risk coverage now. This slide just provides to you the different lines of coverage that we have for all of the city and the premiums that we paid for 2022, and this is on a calendar year basis. So for all of the coverage, our premiums were $2.248 million, and we have these lines of coverage. I did want to, most of the activity where we have claims is in workers' compensation, so I'll talk a little bit about how those claims have performed. We have not had claims other than, we have not had any claims hit other lines so far in 2022.
So our workers' compensation, for 2021, we had a total of 75 claims. 28 of those were indemnity, which means they are lost work time associated with the injury. And 47 of those were medical only, where they might have had some initial treatment, but they did not have to lose time from work. Our expenses for medical and indemnity claims were just over $1 million for 2021. In 2021, 55% of our claims were medical only. 7% of those claims were litigated, which is well below the benchmark for work comp litigated claims. And our average time off from work for an indemnity claim was 84.6 days. And then for a medical claim to go from start to conclusion was 70.7 days, which is much lower than the average benchmark for lost time and getting to maximum medical improvement. You could go to the next slide. So I just wanted to give you those figures, and then this slide 15 shows you the financial data for 2017 through 2021, so you can just have a look back of the history of the expenses. And that concludes my presentation over the risk funds, and I'd certainly stand for any questions that you may have.
Questions for Ms. Russell? Looking around the room, make sure I don't miss anybody on screen. Councilwoman Ortiz, are you still online? Can't see it. There you are. Yeah, okay, good. No further questions? Mr. Wade?
Mr. Mayor, before we move on to the next segment, I wanted to add a little bit of color to Councilman Dobler's question in regards to inflation. The 8 points is running current. Since 2017, we're looking at about a 20% inflation from January 1 of 2017 to current versus the increases we've talked about on comp.
Mr. Wade, is this a point where we sometimes take a break around 8 o'clock, or can we finish up quicker?
No, I think it's to be an appropriate time.
Okay. We'll recess for 10 minutes and then return to this topic in the agenda. Thank you. We're back. We're back from recess, and we'll pick up where we left off. Mr. Wade?
Mr. Mayor, there are 3 more departments that we would like to whiz through tonight. Legal, Finance, and the City Manager's Office. Would like to apologize to those listening from home. We're having some technical difficulties with the mics. That's why it's been cutting in and out, so we apologize if they're having trouble hearing from home. Adam?
So we'll go ahead with the legal department. So the legal department has a total budget of about $2.7 million, and it's spread between the general fund and the special liability fund. So just as a reminder, when we file the budget with the state, we authorize the fund balance as well as a miscellaneous contingency. So it is not our intention to spend the $2.3 million of miscellaneous contingency in the special liability fund, but we do authorize that with the state in case we need to, and with a large claim or whatever comes up. So as far as non-personnel in the legal department, it has remained relatively flat to the 2022 budget. Personnel has seen an increase due to the 10% cost of living adjustments, and FTEs have remained flat from the 2022 budget. And with that, I will turn it over to City Attorney Stanley.
Okay, thank you, Adam. As he said, there have been no material changes to our budget over the last year. We have 3 different departments. If you're familiar with us, we have our general government, we have our litigation division, and then our prosecution division, which are all included inside our budget. We have implemented new case management systems and done other things over this course of this year, but nothing that requires material change in budget. And I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for the city attorney? That'd be a switch, huh? So we can. Councilwoman Nager, did you have a hand up? Oh, okay, just want to check and see. All right, no questions? We'll move on to the second, or the next.
Okay, so our next department is the finance department. Total budget of $2.8 million. 82% of this is personnel. So the majority of the increases in the finance department from 2022 is in personnel. We increased 2 FTEs, and so 2 of those were our graduate fellows. One of those positions we were able to cover with a management analyst in public works. So instead of filling that position, we were able to add 2 graduate fellows. And then we were also able to add a grant administrator. And through that process, we did not backfill Director Wade's budget position. So that's how we have 2 FTE increase from 2022. So I guess I'll turn it over to Director Wade.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, City Manager, I'm very proud of the program that we've started with the Fellows Program. We were able to do that expense neutral by doing some reorganization within the department. Heather and Mary are both off my right shoulder, are doing a fantastic job. They represent the future for municipal government, and that's a program we hope to be able to continue through over time. Certainly outcome-based budgeting is something that has been pounded on you over and over and over again over the last several months. That is a highlight for what we've done over the last year and moving forward. And then because of that outcome-based budgeting, we'll see some savings in software. We're a little ahead of the curve with this as compared to commercially available software. And so we've been able to do some stuff in-house with Adam and Josh that will recognize some savings right now. We may have to, in the future, re-explore that, but for now, we're happy with what we're getting. And I'll stand for questions.
Councilman Dobler.
Thank you. So, Steve, you didn't backfill your position as budget director. Are you taking that on as part of your job, or how's the budget getting accomplished?
So I'm very happy that I've got Adam to my left and Josh in the back. Both came on with us about a year and a half ago. Great potential, and so both of them stepped up and really filled that budget manager jobs themselves in a dual capacity. And so it's been a fun year to watch them grow.
So you're saying it took 2 people to fill your job? Okay, thank you.
That was us paying him.
Further questions for Mr. Wade? Something I'd like to ask you about.
Yes, sir.
In the past, you've mentioned the effectiveness of Kalia and her work in your department. Can you maybe give us an update on how successful she has been?
Absolutely. In fact, you will hear our Q2 financial report at the next governing body meeting. And with that, we actually have a report prepared for you, Mayor, on some of her activities. She's been doing a phenomenal job, certainly with the fast pace with Spark grant applications and whatnot with the state. Kept her pretty busy for right now, but we've got some data prepared that we'll share with you next week.
Okay. And there are others who have been on this council longer than I, but I know from sitting on the council before becoming mayor, I've been impressed with it seems like the freshness, the responsiveness, the more detail that I see coming out of finance. It just seems like it's a different energy coming out of that department. So I appreciate the work everyone does in your department.
I appreciate that, sir. We're having a lot of fun right now.
Good. Okay. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Wade? And if not, we'll move on to the next section. Oh, Councilman Nager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that anybody would find this job very, very fun. I really, really appreciate. And thank you for your work.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Wade, that thing keeps popping up and blocking my view here. There you go. Okay, Mr. Wade?
Okay, so our last department that we'll go through is the city manager's office. So this is on pages 68 through 76 of your budget books. And the city manager's office has a total budget of about 2.3 million. It includes the city clerk, the communications department, and the community engagement division. There are 19 FTEs, which is a 4 FTE increase from 2022. And so the additions include the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, an HR investigator, and I will make a correction on this, that this is not an additional FTE. This is just a change in position from our IPA, internal police auditor position, to a HR investigator. Senior executive assistant that was added, and then there are 2 blight crew members that were not in the original budgets that were handed out to the governing body. They were mentioned in the text of the community engagement division, but since that budget had been published, we have added those 2 positions, and those positions are due to changes in our contract with the inmate program with Shawnee County. So that will be ending at the end of this year, and so these 2 positions are to replace that work. Couple other expense highlights. There's just a small increase for executive training and additional monies for future citizen and employee surveys. That's it for the city manager's office, if there are any other questions.
Any questions, Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Adam, I did have a couple questions. I don't know if you can put that slide back up because I don't know if we have it here, do we? So another senior executive assistant, who would that be the assistant for, or?
That executive assistant position, everybody knows Leroy. And so that position is actually going to be transitioned over to the community engagement, and will be taking up executive assistant duties there as well as the ombudsman position. And so that Caitlin was actually the addition, and Leroy was being transitioned over to that. So Caitlin was actually the administrative assistant, but community engagement is part of the city manager's office.
And then I guess if I could just follow up on the blight crew members, is this because of the change in our culture that blight crew members are?
No, the blight crew members, we have lost inmate crew with Department of Corrections for a variety of reasons. They've reduced the number. So we had to look at options of how we are going to maintain blight control. And so in speaking with community engagement, we're adding two full-time employees that will be doing blight remediation, and they'll be carrying out those duties.
And please know, I'm not saying that those aren't necessary. I'm just wondering, though, they're going to be in the city manager's office, and
well, they'll work out of community engagement, and the reason for that is they'll be paid out of different funds that are federal funds, and so that's why they'll be carried out of community engagement.
Will they also be interfacing with Mike Haugen and his?
They will, and they will only be able to do blight remediation within the NIAs because they are funded through federal dollars like that.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, that was kind of my question. Does that help fill some of the vacancies that we had over in code, or we still have?
No, these are new positions that will purely be doing blight remediation through community engagement, and like I said, they'll be assigned to the NIAs because of the funding.
Okay. So the NIAs in general, any of them can utilize them?
Well, there'll be cleaning up in the NIAs. The thing that needs to be pointed out here is there's no additional dollars. The same amount of dollars that are being used to fund the inmate crew and all that will be used to fund these two positions.
Councilman Hiller?
Thank you. A question on that then. Of course, we're working on trying to reduce the demand for that with Change Our Culture, but also, are those seasonal positions, or are you imagining they would be year-round?
They'll be year-round. The blight situation that we have going on within the city of Topeka is as such that we have to have that addressed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
So, City Manager, if I could add maybe a little bit of color to the question, and Director Finder can certainly correct me if I'm wrong on this one. The reason why we're split between property maintenance and City Manager's office is because of federal dollars that are involved. So CDBG money is funding the help on this one, which means it's restricted to LMI neighborhoods. We can't use them just anywhere in the city. And that's what's causing some of the shift and maybe some confusion as to why it's structured the way it is.
Thank you.
Further questions from the body? Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So help me understand this. We have, you said two new people, that will just go around and clean up stuff, is that correct?
Yeah, in essence, correct. In essence, they'll be doing what the jail crew does currently.
So we won't have a jail crew, period, is what you're saying?
That's correct. We'll have some, but not for blight remediation because they're reducing the number of crews available to us.
And you're saying they'll be full-time, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And there'll just be two of them?
Correct.
So we've lost the inmate crew altogether, is what you're saying?
For blight remediation.
Just one of them.
Okay. I wanted to talk about the HR investigator. He hasn't been hired, or she hasn't been hired, correct?
No.
That position hasn't been.
No, we're getting ready to post that this week. That is actually the IPA position, which we are expanding the roles of the IPA to also include some internal investigations. And the focus there is also that we don't have to refer those out to a third-party investigator to do those follow-ups.
Okay. And then I had another question. I'm trying to think of it real quick. Oh, the ombudsman. I don't like how it's functioning now, so I hope we can get a better grip on that. I think you understand how I want it to function. If somebody has an issue, they go straight there, and that person sends it to wherever it needs to go, and everybody needs to understand that they need to get back with that person in a timely manner. And I think it's taken up a lot of time when they're sent to the attorney, legal department, council department. It's just slowing down the process. And I know for myself, and in speaking with the mayor, we wanted it to be more efficient, more effective. And I don't feel like that has ever gotten to be a big start like that. I love Monique, but she's one person, she can't do it all.
Yeah, that's why this is one of the conversations I've been working with Ms. Glaudet on this. And so this is one of the things that we hope that with reassigning Mr. Younger to that position, that's the ombudsman as well, that'll be his primary focus. And so we hope to enhance that and make that where we want to be, or where we want it to be. And so hopefully you'll see some dramatic changes rolling out of that in the near future.
And I think the key to that is that our staff, our city staff knows what he's doing and know that they have to respond to his request in a timely manner.
And that's part of the reason it'll be maintained out of the city manager's office.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further questions on this division? None? Mr. Wade?
Mr. Mayor, City Manager, we're actually at a point to where we can pause budget discussions for tonight. We can finish up next week. We have IT, municipal court, and planning lined up for next week. And City Manager, if you concur, we can probably duck on the special session that we've had on hold.
Yeah, at this time, with where we're at in the budget and budget conversation and what we will be covering next week, we do not anticipate a need for an August 23rd meeting.
Well, I appreciate that consideration. I think it's gone smoothly, and I think it's helped the process. It shows. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for Adam and Mr. Wade for your presentations, and everyone else who presented tonight, Jackie. So if there's nothing further on the discussion, we'll move to public comment. My update is there's no one signed up.
Correct.
Okay. So we'll move now on to announcements. And Brenda?
Right, for the August 16th meeting, we have one proclamation. We have 3 presentations. We have Financial Services Quarterly Report, Planning and Development Quarterly Report, and the Topeka Police Department Behavioral Health Unit Update. Action items include the 2023 Legislative Agenda Resolution, the 2023 to 2025 Joint Memo of Agreement for Group Health Care, Amendment Number 3 to the 2020 to 2022 Joint Memo of Agreement for Group Health Care. We have a notice of public hearing for the operating budget, resolution for Providence Homes Plus for the conditional use permit, and that is located at 1920 Southwest 32nd Street. Non-action items include discussion for the Southeast 39th and Croco Road annexation request, city employee residency requirement, and then continue on the budget.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Just a couple things. Impact Avenue's 3-year celebration is this Friday at the Holiday Building from 2 to 4. That is to celebrate the success of the program, and everybody is welcome to attend. For the public, anticipate the week of August 15th. There'll be information after the governing body is notified of the information outlining the process for the city manager's process, the next major step that we anticipate happening around August 30th.
Okay, good. Appreciate the updates. A lot of people are wondering in the community when I get out and about, they want to know what the status is and where we are, so I appreciate those updates. Anything else further?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll move on. Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just a reminder that kids are going back to school this week. And so be careful on your commute to work and from work, because there's going to be a lot of kids out and about, and they are some of our most precious resources. So keep them safe, keep your eyes on the road, and slow down for them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, it occurred to me as we went through the agenda tonight, we had 3 items on there: the discussion of the rural housing statute, 735 Kansas, which is going to be a great addition to downtown, and then the South Topeka TIF district. All 3 things that relate to growth of the community, kind of spread across the board. The first one really will allow us, hopefully, to jumpstart some residential housing, which we desperately need, and then a downtown business that's going to continue the evolution of Kansas Avenue. And finally, just great things happening on South Topeka Boulevard So really happy to see those things, appreciate the work that staff has done, planning, GTP, and everybody involved in it. Thank you, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Just two quick things. I'm zooming in this evening because I think, as I've told others and made it public, I have finally caught COVID. I'm now part of that club, like half of the world. Managed to avoid it for 2.5 years, but my wife and I and our son all have it, and so it'll be fine. I'm weathering it. I don't feel great, but I could feel worse. But it's a good time to remind people that there's still those of you out there who don't have your vaccine or who need to go get your booster shot, so go do it. I think that I'm weathering this better because I've had that than if I hadn't. So it's just a good time to remind everybody, if you can, still go do that. The second thing is, ARPA application deadline passed. We had 85 applications turned in, requesting just under $34 million of our $10 million pot. We will begin our first round of evaluations on Friday, August 19th at 3 o'clock at the Holiday Building. Final determinations will not be made on that date. What will happen is sort of a first round of the process, perhaps eliminating some, and then moving others on to where we need some additional information and feedback, or have some follow-up questions. So I think our goal is to still hopefully bring some final recommendations to this body in October, but we're going to take a couple meetings to work through those applications and that process. But that's where we're at in it. We've got the applications. Myself and the committee are working through them as we speak. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Lesser?
No, just one thing real quick. This past weekend was the annual 2030 club gala. Haven't got the final numbers back, but that great organization. Mayor, I got to see you there, and Mr. City Manager Cochran, and was a great event. Got to raise a lot of money for the youth and the different organizations, and a shout out to Walmart. I had no idea. I don't know if you did, Mayor, but I had no idea the number of coats that Walmart donates to kids in Topeka. Was I had no idea. So anyway, great event, raised a lot of money for by the young 2030 men in our community that just continue to give back. So it was a great event, made better by Mr. Emerson not being able to participate and sit at my table because he was sick. So made it even a much more enjoyable evening. So thank you.
Hey, Councilwoman Heller.
I have to follow that.
Yeah.
Just two things. Speaking of Walmart, I got a chance with some others that are around this room to go to the Walmart Distribution Center's 1-year anniversary about a week and a half ago, I guess now. And I like to get out to any or all of those when I can, but I had not been out there yet. I was at the neighborhood Walmart opening in my district at 6th and McVicker a couple of years ago. They described that you could get both Arrowhead Stadium and the Sprint Center in their building. It is huge. That's all good. What was the strongest, as far as impression, was the spirit of that entire, they had all the employees there off the line, but from the very top leadership who were there down to every employee that was there, the spirit of working together as a team, how empowered they are, how much they can contribute to how the processes go and so on, was unavoidable, and it was fun. It was just really great to be there, and I was really proud to have them in the community. So hats off to Walmart. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Change Our Culture has come up a couple times this evening, and our mowing program, the backup mowing, I would call it, did kick off on the 1st of August with our 3 vendors who are fundamentally, just in case people didn't understand it, as we are working on the policy and procedure side on Change Our Culture of Property Maintenance to look at what we're doing with code compliance and what those steps are, from whether somebody's anticipating somebody's coming out or turning them in, all the way through inspections, follow-up, admin hearings, court, consequences. We're looking at that, and actually our preliminary recommendations are under review and comment right now. But the action side of our agenda for Change Our Culture is a goal of everybody in town, as much as possible, just getting their yard mowed this summer and mowed regularly through the rest of the season. We have 3 vendors. One is T Squared, which is a young man who has his own private company, who's available to do a fixed rate mow for $30 a pop anywhere in the LMI area. And frankly, if somebody's outside that area and doesn't have anybody, they can certainly reach out for some assistance to see if he's available. He's got plenty to do in our LMI area and his own business already, but we are delighted to have him. And then we have 2 nonprofits, Omni Circle, which is based in the Central Park neighborhood and has chosen to take on particularly prioritizing Central Park as volunteers to help anybody who can't get their yard mowed. And then the Gil Carter Initiative in the Highland Acres neighborhood. I will tell you, it was just August 1st, so a week's reports. When Omni went out, they went out in advance to just talk to people in the neighborhood. By the time they went out last Monday night, they did 14 mows. Of those, it would have been 16, but 2 people had already mowed their yards before they showed up. They had asked people if they could help, like, pick up the yard before the mowing came, or maybe work with them. And in at least 4 to 6 cases, that occurred as well. It's just really exciting. We had others who called in from outside the district. One ended up hiring a young man on her block to do hers, and another had gotten a referral from somebody. Social media is full of people who will mow. Our idea is, again, and thanks to all the city staff, we have a cross-departmental staff team that is helping on that program, and they have been tremendous. We're still working our way out this first season, but the idea is that people will, maybe with a little jump start with this summer initiative, figure out a way to get their yard mowed up front and all season without needing the city's intervention at all. Don't have a report yet from Mike Haugen as to whether those numbers have gone down from code's point of view, but we know that people have jumped up and thought, man, something's happening. We're getting tremendous response that something this positive is happening in the city. And I want to encourage everybody who's watching, but particularly colleagues on the council and staff, there's information on the Change Our Culture page on the city's website. So certainly push that out to anybody, or pick it up off the city's Facebook page and share it. Just get it on out there to your own neighborhoods or anybody that you know of that might be in need. There is also a corresponding opportunity for people to sign up to be volunteers as individuals, as a family group, or a Sunday school class, or a youth group, or a business that says, hey, I'm already hiring somebody. We could do another couple of mows while we're out. The number, we have, thanks to Monique Glaudet, whose name has come up already, we have, and city manager, I'll give you credit for this, have a dedicated phone number, 368-9530, that people can call and find out how to volunteer, find out how to contact the backup mowing, or let them know that they are in need and can't afford help, and get posted. We are working now with some sponsors to do a wrap-up celebration of everything that got accomplished this summer and everybody who was involved, likely to be the 1st of October at the plaza. So stay tuned for those developments. Thanks everybody for pushing it out and your help. We're, again, really excited.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank all of the organizations that did all the back-to-school events. I know Salvation Army was a part of it. They had something, 14 churches that were at Highland Park. And Tara Wallace, who is a licensed therapist for youth, she had something over there as well. So it's nice to see, and I say this all the time, that Topeka is a great place and a giving place to live. And all these organizations have stepped up time and time to help our youth. And this is a trying time right now with parents trying to get on their feet, trying to bounce back from COVID. And so I know that was very, very helpful. I know the Night Out Against Crimes, I know several of them passed out backpacks, and I think that's pretty awesome. So I just wanted to personally thank them. Hannah Banana stole my thunder. The kids start back tomorrow and Thursday. High schools go on Thursday. And so I know they're short-staffed, and we just want to continue to have people, encourage people to apply. Watch out for those kids. If we can get Emerson Construction to leave a little earlier so he won't have to speed through those school zones, that would be great. And the last thing I want to say is, hoy, hoy, mighty Troy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Emerson.
I'm not even going to respond to that. I will say, Mr. Lesser talked about the 2030 gala, and all I can say is I oftentimes find myself feeling sick when I'm going to meet with Councilman Lesser. So this was no different. No, but on a serious note, this is a bittersweet week in the Emerson household because our last two will be headed to the senior year on Friday. So that will be sad. But I did, besides the personal stuff, I did want to thank City Manager Cochran. When you took this job, you knew this was going to be interim, and now you decided not to apply for the job, which I totally understand, given now you know the job, so of course you wouldn't apply. But I really do. You've worked your butt off, and I really appreciate everything you've done. And even today, I had 2 meetings with you today, and I know I was in 2 of them, but you probably had 10 meetings, and I appreciate that you're working just like you're going to be the city manager for the next 100 years, and I really appreciate everything you're doing. So, great job.
Councilman Kell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Apologize, I just flew in from Providence. I've only been back in town for about an hour, but I went up to a wedding of a naval buddy of mine that when we served together, and I just want to say congratulations to the happy couple, and then happy anniversary to my wife. Today is our anniversary, and we spent it at the airport. And she puts up with my shenanigans, my tomfoolery, and sometimes my outright craziness. And it's been 19 years, and some days it just feels like it was yesterday that we got married and we had 2 little kids, and now they're almost grown themselves. And I just want to say happy anniversary to my wife, and dealing with everything I want to do, that sometimes she puts herself on the back burner to support me in my endeavors that I want to take on in life to better our family and better our community. So happy anniversary to my wife.
Thank you. I'd like to take this time to wish my daughter a belated happy birthday. The birthday occurred in between council meetings, so I didn't get to do it on time, but I still want to wish her a happy belated birthday. 2030 Club, that's been covered. I appreciate that. Walmart, that was mentioned. I want to point out that while we were there celebrating with the Walmart executives and the employees, that we were the second team to show up. All the dignitaries and so forth came the second day. The first day they celebrated was with all their employees and their families. And I think that says something about how much they value their employees there, is that they put them first to celebrate, and then they brought the rest of us in. So I appreciate that consideration that they gave their employees. And I met 2 or 3 people there that I knew who had come to Walmart to work, and they had been out of Topeka and moved back into Topeka to take those jobs. So we can see some of those results and hope they continue that way. Another thing I'd like to follow up on kind of is when we talk about the volunteerism with Councilwoman Hiller talking about her project. Topeka has a good bank of volunteers. They always have had. And right now, I know that the Salvation Army, and they were mentioned earlier, they are in need of a couple soccer coaches. They're doing really well with their boxing program. They're getting more and more kids there. Their programs are growing leaps and bounds. And if you get by there at all, you'll see they're preparing those fields for more activity. But they need a couple volunteer soccer coaches, and there are a lot of them in this town. So if anybody's interested, please contact the Salvation Army directly. They'll be more than glad to hear from you. I don't know what their schedule is or anything like that, so I can't give you any more details other than their need for a couple coaches. So please consider that if you're listening in today. The last thing I want to bring up, and I want to congratulate two of our own city employees, Mr. Stephen Wade and Amanda Stanley. Both of them have been accepted to a pretty prestigious leadership initiative hosted by the Bloomberg Harvard. They've got their tickets and they're ready to leave. They'll be leaving on Sunday. Don't move. Ready to leave on Sunday. And they'll spend about a week there. I think that they will do well in the program. I think they will represent Topeka in the program very well. Topeka has a good name there at Bloomberg, and they are ready for you. I have talked to them about you too, and they are ready for you. And I congratulate you for being accepted because that's a very competitive opportunity. So we are to congratulate you for that. And that's the last thing I have with regards to announcements. We do have the need for at least 2, possibly 3 executive sessions this evening. So if the city attorney would read.
The motion will be to recess into executive session not to exceed 1 hour to discuss employer-employee negotiations related to multiple city unions, including but not limited to healthcare negotiations and negotiations with ASME Developmental Services, ASME Water, and WPC as authorized by KSA 75-4319B3. The following staff may be needed to assist the governing body in its deliberations: Interim City Manager Cochran and other staff he deems necessary.
So heard the need for an executive session. Do I have a motion to move? Motion to move into executive session by Councilman Emerson, second by Councilman Dobler. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So there you go. There you go. Okay, we will go into executive session. We'll have just a 5-minute break because we had our earlier break, and we'll get started about 8:55.